Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay footage and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Today we're talking about Atlas Fallen. This is a new action hack and slash semi-open adventure from developers Deck 13, the creators of a game that we really enjoyed, that Souls-like game, The Surge. You remember that? This is completely different for them, though. It's big vistas, otherworldly gods, sand superpowers, and hard-hitting combat. This game does kind of feel like a throwback to the 2000s and 2010s in a lot of ways. You know, big, high-concept, silly fantasy, big, chunky, beefy armor characters, but unfortunately, it just feels like it'll fall a bit short for some people. It has some really, truly good aspects, but there's a lot more that it lacks. It's like almost there. It's kind of generic and flawed, but I think it's going to find an audience with some players. Hell, I mean, I was wrong about a lot of other games that seemed generic back in the day, like Kingdoms of Amalur or Two Worlds, and a bunch of people still ended up playing that. Still, this one falls a bit short, but there's still a lot worth talking about. So, just so you know, the usual housekeeping, we've been playing a review copy, and this footage was captured on PlayStation 5 in performance frame rate mode. There's also a quality mode. And don't worry, this video is spoiler-free, so you're good. So, Atlas Fallen takes place in this fantasy world where there's like a ruling class, there's a god war, and the regular people are like an unnamed slaves or serfs. And you, just some random unknown man or woman that you create in a character creator, end up getting your hands on a magic sand gauntlet, giving you the power to fight back and help the people. Also, the gauntlet kind of talks, so take that for what you will. The intro itself is pretty dull. It tosses you right into just conversing with random nameless NPCs, but once you're out there and the main combat loop begins, that's where some of the fun lies. So I am going to start with the best aspect of the game, the combat. So you have attacks with one weapon tied to one button, like say square, and your other weapon on triangle, if you're on controller. Different weapons have different use cases and strength and speed, and you can mix and match on the fly and hold for longer, heavy, charged attacks depending on, which you have. You also have an upward hit to get in the air, as well as a downward hit to bring enemies down sometimes. So you're kind of comboing while also using a dash dodge and a kind of parry. It's like a protect button you tap at the right time before attacks, and it deflects the attack. And oftentimes, it'll freeze an enemy for a few seconds, making them more vulnerable. Bigger enemies, you have to deflect a few times in a row before you freeze them, and with the right timing, that can feel pretty cool to pull off. Then you're also building up your momentum meter, this big meter on the bottom left. Every time it crosses a threshold or a chunk, your weapon becomes bigger and hits harder and does more damage, but you're also susceptible to more damage as well. So it's like a risk-reward thing. You can burn your momentum on special abilities that you have mapped behind a trigger press with face buttons. And they can summon tornadoes, do big interrupt blasts, throw magic blasts, healing strike, big heavy AoE attacks, and a bunch more. And for larger enemies, you're also targeting different body parts to destroy first to sometimes net bigger rewards after the battle. A lot of that stuff is pretty fun. As the enemies get a bit crazier a few hours in, it starts to shine. It feels good to smash enemies in the face with like a charged giant sand fist, or a big axe, or pull in aerial enemies with like a sand spear, all while you're zipping around, strafing on the sand, trying not to die quick, and saving a big momentum finisher or the finisher shatter attack for the last big hit. You can also stay in the air for quite a while. Some decent aerial attacks as well. It's generous with the air dash stuff as you unlock it. Now, as someone who loves combat action games and brawlers, especially Devil May Cry, it's nice to play a game that shakes things up in creative new ways, even if it's kind of simple. Kicking a giant crab's ass can be fun in this game. Unfortunately, I know I mentioned Devil May Cry. This unfortunately, is nowhere near as precise as combat games of that caliber. It can just feel overall imprecise at times. The hits you think land sometimes don't have that connect. There's just like a general weird inconsistency. The camera can also absolutely screw you over and flip around all the time to some really bad angles. It's sometimes like it seems like it's trying to help during mid-battle shifts, but it tends to just get annoying. I'm surprised even in an open area desert sometimes, with nothing else around me but me and an enemy, the camera can still get screwed up. That and fighting with the lock-on system that just doesn't seem to always do what you want it to do can be a bit frustrating. It's almost like it really is a throwback to the early 2000s or 2010s. Now, I think the telltale sign of these specific flaws is like when I'm deep in the game, I'm well versed with the combat at this point. I'm actually pretty good at it, but I only die from bosses or big enemies, not because the boss is kicking my ass, like I got those timings down right, but it's because he summons flying minions that are easy, technically, but getting my character to hit them instead of the boss and dealing with the lock-on and the broken camera at the same time just feels really finicky, and in those crucial seconds I can get whacked. Now, I'm actually surprised at points with how rough the camera and the lock-on combo is, considering the game is all about combat. This is a frustrating miss, but it says a lot about the simple good hack and slashiness of the combat that I still managed to have some fun despite it. The bigger problem is that everything else in the game just isn't very exciting. The story, frankly, just doesn't do it for me. They built a world with like a bunch of lore and self-serious characters with journal entries and motivations, but none of it lands because none of the characters are very memorable. They all look like they were just made in the character creator you built your character with, and none of them stand out visually or in the dialogue, except for like a few weird side quest characters. The same goes for your character, who is just guy or lady. I was happy to at least cover him up in some cool armor, like a kind of like made him like a weird Destiny-looking kind of ancient desert taskmaster. I don't know. Really, a lot of the story boils down to you gaining more power and upgrading your gauntlet to save the world, or really just to get to the next area. And a lot of go here, do that type of stuff, which is fine because I just want to get to the killing, but there's a lot of story and dialogue here. Lots of chatty vendors, side quests, smaller side quests called favors. All of them have something to say about this world and these civilizations and the gods they're trying to defeat. I appreciate the work put into it, but just none of it grabbed me at all. Now, when you're out in the open world areas, of which there are a few, it's mostly the same. You know, not a lot is going to grip you. A lot of barren emptiness, which is fine because you're just cruising around on the sand like a cool surfing magic guy, which I do love. But a lot of it just kind of feels like an old school style RPG area where it's barren, there's a lot of pop-in, and you just see a random enemy like a scorpion wandering around. You walk up to it and you kill it, and then you just keep wandering around until you find a town. And nothing really too compelling in between. Except for a couple of spots. You know, there's some clever hidden things here and there, and some nice little platforming sections to get more stuff that I did kind of enjoy, but it wasn't enough. At least the worlds look cool though, like they look really cool visually. There are some visual bugs and glitches. I've seen some enemies get hung up, and like I mentioned before, some pop-in and some flickering. I've seen other people have worse experiences, but mine wasn't so bad. Then there's also a lot of character progression and stuff you can equip. There are armor sets, which can be upgraded a few levels with resources you find and earn. Nice, effective, simple. You can also get little cosmetics to put on your character that all look pretty cool. Then you're also upgrading your gauntlet both through the story and through spending resources to unlock more gem slots. And then putting stuff in these like magic gem slots grants you passive stuff and those special abilities mapped to the trigger hold I mentioned earlier. You are constantly finding treasure chests and beating enemies that drop these recipes to craft new gems. The amount of stuff they came up with for your character to slot in is actually really surprising. It almost feels like it was made for a bigger game, because I ended up really finding the ones I like and I stuck with them, only occasionally changing it up if a really special one came across my way. And it was weird because the game was just throwing them at me constantly. And then you can also play cooperatively if you have someone you know who is down to jump in with you. The features are basic, but running around this world with someone else probably makes it better. I unfortunately wasn't able to test it. You guys know I'm kind of a lone wolf, but I wouldn't mind smashing some weird evil sand dragons with a friend, you know, cruising around, surfing on the sand together, just finding gems and ignoring the story. Unfortunately, the game is not very long though. It's not a full price game, which is a nice plus. But depending on who you are and how you play, you might get like 14 hours out of this one. There are difficulty modes though, and more completion and stuff might take you longer, but it doesn't feel very long, especially just with the way it's paced. So it is a tough one to recommend right away, right now. It's a flawed, semi-enjoyable thing I think some people might like. I like these mid-tier games by like mid-budget developers. I usually try and celebrate them when I can, but this one is kind of up in the air, you know? The world and the story can be painfully generic, but gliding around on the sand and chopping up some enemies can be kind of fun, even if that combat is messy and imprecise at times. So, if you can't tell, I am mixed, but that's where I'm at with this one. I tried to lay everything out for you. This is the before you buy. You know how this goes by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion, and now I want to hear yours down in the comments. We're putting this video out a little bit after release, so if you were looking forward to this game and you got your hands on it, what do you think? Is Atlas Fallen something that you think is going to grip you for a long time? Is it something that you're considering buying on sale, maybe playing co-op with a friend? I think that's the best way it might work, but who are you? How are you playing it? What are you thinking? Let's talk down in the comments. But if this helped you at all, just our opinion or showing some gameplay on screen, if it helped steer you in any way, clicking a like button's all you got to do to help us out. We would appreciate that. But as always, thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
You are badly wounded. Let us find an anvil to rest.